Hi guys, we're here with Mr. Julien Schaerer, the big boss of Antiquorum Auction and a very well-known watch expert. And we're here today to see what he found in the past season. And Julien.
So these are watches for the November 8 and 9 auction in Geneva. Julien, can you tell us a little bit about the current situation of the auction market and what's trending?
I think it's actually more than the auction market. It's almost like, the worldwide market. And, we've had recent auction results, as we know, in Hong Kong, which gave us really a pulse on how the market is doing. And overall, I think the feeling was, despite some fears at the beginning of the year, where people were kind of uncertain of where the market was going to hold and where it was going to go, it's interesting to note that, we've actually seen prices stabilizing for those that were going down and they were readjusting in the last 2-3 years. And then on the other hand, we've also seen the market increase for many things. The smaller watches still seem to be very trendy. Reference 96s again are still very hot on the market today. We see ladies' watches still with a lot of interest for watches that have special designs, special shapes, little variations that people look into. Stone dials still, very trendy. And then of course we have the kind of neo vintage market that's, showing surprising strength. 3940s, 3970s, 5004s, all this kind of, watches for, I guess, the new collectors coming in the market, which allows them to have a semi-vintage watch, but also with the wearability and practicality of a modern watch.
Yes.
And I think that's kind of where the market, and then we of course go to the whole top of the market where, there I think the market is still extremely strong and still probably growing.
Yeah, I think, I don't know if it's true, so I want to double check with you. I can sense a kind of discrepancy between the very top of end of the market and the slightly lower end of the market, the regular stuff, not the regular, sorry, the 5K, the 10K stuff you were usually buying. A lot of things, some friends have told me have slowed down a little bit, but then the very top end, the very mega expensive vintage watches, they seem to go to auctions. Like this season, we saw, we're seeing crazy expensive, mega rare vintage watches for sale at auction. So yeah, I feel like there's kind of a discrepancy in the buyer, of the market at the moment.
I think it's a lot to do as well with, in periods of a certain, when there's some uncertainty on the market, people tend to shy away maybe from the overly produced watches, things that are very common, that used to be what Instagram was preferring up to, quite recently. And I think people are becoming a little bit more discerning and saying, okay, yes, the Royal Oak is like a super cool watch, but maybe this price increase was too much too short. Meaning that, those have kind of, gone down and now stabilized at a certain price level. And then people would probably much prefer spending the same amount of money on something a little bit more special.
Yes, I remember bidding for one at your auction during COVID. Like a Samandal Royal Oak that was crazy prices back then. It was basically a 15-18 pricing.
Right, exactly.
It's crazy.
Exactly, it's crazy. Yeah.
Well, do we start right now or?
Yeah. Okay. Well, here we're not really talking about trends, right? So we selected a few watches that are rather interesting.
Yes, not trends.
Not trendy.
Everlasting,
interesting designs.
Yes. So how about we start with this very everlasting mother of pearl dial? Could you tell us about this one?
Yeah, I mean, it's one of these extremely rare references. Obviously, you can tell from the style straight away of the case. It's a super early officer's case. So obviously with the hinged back as well that opens.
Yeah.
But really what makes this special, it's the dial, as you said. And it's the two combinations of the dial. Of course, it's the dial which is mother of pearl.
Yeah.
There's very few pocket watches also from the same area from Patek that you actually see with MOP dials.
Yeah.
But this in wristwatches is even more unusual. And then, as we discussed earlier, the interesting fact is, of course, the applied Breguet numerals on an MOP dial, also retails.
Yes.
Yeah.
This is one from somewhere in South America.
Right. I think it's Trujillo, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. It's
Cuba? No, not Cuba. Good question. We'll delete that quick. Amazing. Yeah. No. It's like if you lay it on the table, some people will not look at it twice. It's a small gold watch, but then you take a close look, and when the lighting changes, and you started to be amazed by this kind of things. And again, like I think it's always cool to see these things at your auction because they tend to come up and you tend to find these things.
Yeah, well, we hunt hard to try and find these kind of quirky, unusual things.
Yes. And this one is also with the interesting dial, which I think is pink on pink and you think is oxidized on pink.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, this is, as we discussed earlier, is a 533. Basically similar in all terms of design and construction as the 130.
Yeah.
But just has this really flat bezel to it. So it actually changes the overall look of the watch quite a lot.
Yeah.
Compared to the regular 130.
Yeah.
Actually adds almost some size virtually because of course it's flat.
Yeah.
This was consigned from South America. And moved with the family to Miami.
Yeah.
Obviously, South American, as we know, from the historical market with the association with Chronometro Gondolo, from the early times, really favored usually the pink color of the cases in general. And this is just a really nice example of a watch that's been well preserved, still with nice hallmarks to the case.
Yes.
And just overall, a sexy looking watch.
Amazing. Yeah. And I think you're being humble there. And also, I think the color really is very cool and consistent. So I think collectors and vintage guys will definitely love this one. It's a good size on the wrist as well.
It is.
Don't find it small at all.
Well, as you said, with the resurgence as well as, Patek 96 is becoming really popular at the moment.
Yeah.
A Patek 96 comes in at 31 millimeter in terms of case diameter.
Yeah.
And even this, of course, in today's world is considered small, but when it comes in at 33 is a little bit bigger, but wears well.
Yes, I agree. And shall we move to Homer's favorite, the 1463, the Tessie Tondi, the steel watch Patek phonograph.
Yeah, we have that in common.
So, tell us about this one, Julien.
I mean, the 1463, of course, it's one of those watches, I think, for the fans of the watch and for the fans of, Patek Philippe chronograph. I think especially our generation, I think we tend to really converge towards that. And I think for a few reasons, I think, one, it's a watch that's not really that recognizable. It is if you're a real expert, but if you're wearing it on the wrist and it's semi concealed, it could be a Movado chronograph. It could be quite a lot of the waterproof chronographs from that period, from the 50s, 60s kind of time. But of course, it's in terms of simplicity and understatement and elegance and class, I think, in my opinion, it's probably one of the best, if not the best, Patek Philippe just simple chronograph ever made.
Yes.
We were lucky enough to find this watch fresh to the market, discovered in Italy from the original family, actually about already 5 months ago, and with those watches, it's all about the condition. It's all about the dial. It's of course, it's been worn. It's one of the late ones. It's almost towards the end of the production, so already well into the 1960s in terms of production. And it's just a beautiful, simple watch. Of course, if we could choose, we would probably always choose the Breguet numerals first, but of course we're talking also another price category. The Breguet indexes add another 100,000 probably to the result on a 1463. This is one of the classicer layouts with the baton indexes and Roman numerals, but still a really nice, fair, honest watch.
Yes. I prefer the Roman over the Brigade, as Homer said. I feel like the Brigade on steel chronographs is kind of, very well used idea. A lot of brands, they use that idea now. Sure, yeah. See this very classic design of Patek chronograph is nice.
It looks more masculine, right?
Yes,
More clean.
Roman. Very cool. Yeah. No, it's crazy. It's also fresh to the market.
Yeah.
We hear a lot about these families in Italy.
Yes.
That I guess like they're not really into watches anymore. Maybe the elder generation are into watches, and now they're selling these pieces.
I think it marks somewhat of a tradition. I mean, of course, Italy has always been, probably one of the, the most important markets in the world for well over 50 years in terms of, passion and interest, and also, social status. Your watch already back then was, showing a certain taste or a certain level of society in which you're at. And I think that's probably today, I think a lot of the youth, when something like this could be passed down, a lot, I would say, of the newer generations are probably less into watches than the previous generations were. And if you have to choose, and in the end it's quite often a financial decision to say, okay, your grandfather had this nice 1463, you could choose to still wear it on the wrist and enjoy it, or maybe you could get 100 or 200,000 euros as a down payment on your house, or for another reason. And more often than not, they choose to go that way.
That's okay. Well, you let the collectors enjoy the watch and you enjoy the house.
Exactly. Yeah. It benefits everyone in the end.
Exactly.
And increases collection, right?
No. No. And where's this one from? The UG?
So this UG was actually found in Belgium.
Wow.
On my last valuation day, and UG. It's interesting to see some of these more wild creations from them. And funny enough, this is a reference 12324, I believe.
Okay. Wow.
It's a crazy, fancy lug case in pink gold, which gives it a lot of size and a lot of presence, still with a nice hallmark to the side. Pulsation scale. And actually, when we started researching that, we actually found that there was only about 3 other examples of this known. And then when we looked at the archives, you definitely see that photo illustrated in the UG archives with exactly this case configuration. I just thought that it's something very unusual and that you just don't see almost ever.
Do you think with the resurgence of UG, the brand, these older vintage UGs could, see a better future?
I think UGs have in the boom have already increased a lot in terms of value.
Yeah.
I mean, if you think about it and go back in time, UGs 10, 15 years ago were hugely undervalued watches. Most of them, had a value of between like 1 to 5K maximum, and that would probably encompass 90% of the value of UGs. I think UG has stabilized now. Prices have gone down somewhat compared to the height, when we see the hype with Nina Rindt and all those that were the most popular ones. But I think in this case, when it's that rare, the market is willing to pay up for it.
Yes, for sure. Yeah. And we are going back to our main brand today, which is Patek Philippe. But to me, actually, vintage Patek Philippe feels like a different thing, like different brand, because they just have so much to offer. You can buy their perpetuals, their Calatravas, their automatics, their world times if you're lucky. But like so many different options, and it's not just like I'm collecting this one brand. You have so many things to collect, right?
Yeah.
And here we found a theme really easily. They're all automatics, and let's start with the most modern one, the big boy, the 3450.
Yeah. I mean, always liked the 3450. Obviously, a white gold version would be the ultimate dream.
Yeah.
But you know, it's amazing to see the differences of design and the avant-garde design of the 3448 and 3450, because it really stepped out from what Patek had done traditionally. If you go one generation back and consider the 2499, you know, it's a very busy but somewhat still older looking watch. You know, in this you have already a very simplified design. Everything is kind of compact. It's very clean. It's very neat. They have, you know, the leap year indicator, which was like a really nice function to it. And in terms of production numbers, you know, they made very few. I mean, and even the production years was very little. I mean, they only made them for 6 years before they discontinued it. And then the 3940 came in.
Yes.
You know, and 3940 is a very different looking watch. Yeah. Again, you know, more busy design.
Yeah.
And, you know, much thinner. So, you know,
a lot more mass produced as well.
Yes, a lot more mass produced, etc. So, you know, this is, if you want, kind of one of the last of the old school Patek,
Yeah.
you know, from 1518, 2499, and then this one that comes in. And what's nice about it is, of course, this is question of condition. You know, these you wear very easily. The lugs have a tendency to get very thin. I mean, sometimes, you know, you go to see it and you see these very, very thin lugs. They really wear quite a lot.
Yeah.
And, you know, and this one, you know, is very nice example. Still with like pretty clean hallmarks on the side of the case, which you can see actually without a loop, which is always a good sign. And also, you know, has on the back, you know, this lip to open the watch with still the 18 karat gold stamp on there, which on all the ones that I've seen, probably 9 out of 10, this 18 karat disappears because it's so prone to wear. It's, you know, it's right on the back.
Right.
You know, it wears on your wrist, on whatever you're putting it down every time. And here it's like a really nice and clean example.
Yeah.
What's the estimate on this, man?
The estimate is 130 to 180.
Yeah. So they're very undervalued watches, I think, for vintage Pateks world. You know.
I agree. I mean, if you can see it clearly that's the inspiration for the annual calendars, right? The 5296s and
Absolutely.
I mean, if you spend the money, you can get like a modern Patek, maybe with a perpetual calendar chronograph. But you spend this much money, you can get one of the rarest vintage perpetuals,
Right.
that Patek, you know, would never make again.
Right. I mean, I think they really represent tremendous, you know, value for money.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
The shape is super interesting. I mean, you're basically buying a 3448, but with a leap year for a better price with more tech. It's interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
it's great size too, huh?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And these two we're going to talk about, they share the same movement.
Yes.
Yeah. Let's start with arguably the first one, and like the first one to house this movement, the famed 12-600 AT, the 2526. Yeah.
I mean, you know, 2526 is just, you know, one of those great, you know, automatic, waterproof watches with the enamel dial.
Yeah.
You know, this one was serviced by Patek. It's what is nice about it is, of course, is the bracelet, which is one of those fantastic bracelets.
Yeah. Like butter.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
It's very light and very well made, and for me, it's, you know, the ultimate summum of the quality of bracelet making of the time. A lot of these bracelets were made by Guy Frère, that
Yeah.
everybody knows,
Yeah.
and you can just tell by the finish and the quality. And, you know, of course, when we got it, didn't come with an extract, so we weren't sure. So we ordered the extract, and finally it came, and they confirmed delivery with the bracelet on it. So, you know, that's always a nice, you know, plus to have, that it wasn't just added; it was, you know, really born with the watch.
So shall we just go back to the movement that these two watches share, the 12-680? Jay, maybe you have more.
Sure, I can substitute in briefly. No, because I owned a few 2526s. I'm a big nerd for this movement. For those who know, like Rolex, they patented the first like full rotor automatic movement in the 1930s. So Patek had to wait like 20 years. So in 1953, they debuted this movement 12-600, and Patek waited because they were waiting for the expiry of the patent, but they were not waiting to they were not waiting to develop a new technology per se. But this one, Julien told me earlier, is one of the most beautiful automatic movements of all time. Like even now, it still is. It's all the bevels, all the finishing, the rotor. If you see the rotor, we're gonna attach a video here. You can see the guichet is done gradually from in to out. There's a smaller guichet to like a bigger guichet, the bigger checks. It's just everything Patek has done and done by hand. So like it's crazy to think about these watches were made in 1950s by hand. All these movements, people were talking about independence today. They're using hand-operated machines to make handmade finishing and stuff. But all these are handmade. I mean, we're talking about vintage Pateks. Every one of them has the quality, the standards of any of the best independents that you will recognize today. They were made with care, with love, So yeah, that's the movement. I mean, it's one of the best. And Julien mentioned earlier, it comes with the enamel dial. It's also one of Patek's signature.
Sure.
So you're having Patek's greatest movement plus Patek's greatest dial, and the bracelet. What more can you ask for?
Yeah. So this example here is a nice example. You have the bracelet, and it's driven by the archive that it's actually an original bracelet.
Exactly.
Plus the dial is not damaged.
No.
Condition enamel. Quite rare for. 2526, right?
Quite rare. And Julien said it's one of the earlier dials with the indexes. Kind of, they have feet and they're stuck on the dial instead of they're not glued.
Right, not soldered or anything.
Oh, wow. Soldered.
Oh, they're soldered. Okay.
Yeah, so that's like a very big plus for 2526s. They usually come in at least like 10% premium.
Oh yeah,
Plus, if they're amazing, a lot more. Yeah.
What's the estimate for this piece?
25 to 35. So it's unquestionable value. Really.
Wow.
For 1/3 of price of a Nautilus, you can get gold Patek with bracelet with the best movement and the dial and the enamel dial. Come on.
Yeah.
It's just the world we're living right now. Yeah. But this one also, arguably, I think this one, because I experienced this one, I think this one is cooler to me. And the story, you said.
Yeah, I mean, when you already have something, you're already always looking for something else, right?
Yes.
And so you have the enamel dial, and you have the bracelet, and maybe you're looking for something because it's a little bit thinner. It stays waterproof, and this was found actually right before we closed the catalog. The gentleman walked in. It was his dad's watch that he inherited, and he initially intended to keep the watch, but he absolutely wanted it serviced, and so he sent it to Patek in Geneva to service it, and Patek came back with a 4,500 overhaul cost, and he did decide to actually go ahead, so he did do the service, but he was extremely upset at the cost, and for him it was prohibitive in terms of cost versus what he was getting.
Yeah.
But of course, for us in the watch business, or for you guys that know how much a perpetual calendar, even a Royal Oak, costs to overhaul, it might not be such a surprise. But for someone to spend that kind of money just for a simple overhaul, and we're not talking about restoration, there wasn't any broken parts to it, so it's just a movement overhaul, and for him,
it's a money for Rolex.
right,
Crazy.
right. And so for him, it was just a little too much, and he said, okay, I am going to service it. He picked it up, and then he brought it to us. It's a nice example. I mean, you recognize the classic PP crown that you of course find also on the 2526. So another common point with the waterproof case. And it's just, a nice watch, being worn, still has nice hallmarks on it. And what's nice is that he actually, once he went home, found the original certificate to go with it, and sent it in just in time for the final photos of the catalog.
Yeah.
And so we included it in, and it's in at an 18 to 14,000 estimate. So
amazing.
again, I think quite reasonable.
Of course, I think maybe 1% of all the Calatravas today, they have their original cert.
Right.
It's crazy
Yeah.
to have that.
Yeah.
And this one is cool to me because it's waterproof and it's automatic. And I wouldn't imagine the size to be like this. It wouldn't be this thing today.
Right.
It'd be twice as thick.
Yeah, it would.
Any modern watch. This is crazy watch.
If you compare it actually with prices of retail right now,
Yeah.
right, it's great value, no? I mean,
Amazing value.
it's amazing.
Like the cheapest Calatrava you're gonna find are gonna be 30K and above.
It's somewhere around 30K now.
Yeah.
It's true.
Yeah. I'd rather have that any day of the week, for sure. Because they really don't make it like that, and it's like not a marketing say. Like it's just the dial. They don't make it like that. The movement, definitely not. So
Yeah, and this one is raised enamel as well.
beautiful. Yeah, raising enamel. The dial is perfect. Yeah,
Honestly, like 4K for an overhaul of this watch, yeah, not bad, isn't it?
wow. Yeah, it's the lucky for us.
Yeah, it depends on which side you're standing.
Right. No, right. I remember I even sent just a normal vintage watch to IWC, and my cost was around 2,000 already at the time. But for something of this magnitude for Patek, I mean, like the very first automatic movement of the brand, the service at that price, I think it's reasonable. I mean, if they're doing a proper job in every short, so
Just moving on, as we were discussing, just how wide vintage Patek selection could be. This one, Julien kindly pointed out, is also a Patek Philippe.
Yeah, it is, and obviously you wouldn't know it just by looking. And even when you went through the windows, just looking at it, right, you probably browse right through without actually knowing. But this is a truly fantastic example of the creativity and the wild design that Patek had throughout the 1950s, crafting these masterpieces really that are works of art. A kind of bracelet that's, of course, with this hinged cover here covering the dial on it. It actually came from the original Australian family. Who bought it. It was her mother's watch. We received it. It's retailed by Houseman, and then we ordered the extract, and we were a little bit late ordering the extract, and now extracts take a good almost 10 weeks to come through now when you order them through their website. But we were really happy to see that this was a 3006 bar 10. They use the bars usually to describe either different types of bracelets or different type of finishes to the watch. So this is a bar 10, so I've actually only ever seen one other with this exact configuration with these flowers on it, which are pavé with rubies and diamonds. And what's interesting also is that when we actually ordered the extract, the bracelet itself didn't have any Patek Philippe signs on them, and for me it wasn't so surprising because of course sometimes they used, such as Gay Frères, external bracelet makers that were more specialized and more skilled than some of the workmen at Patek Philippe, more like jewelry makers than actually watchmakers. And but we were happy to see that when we ordered the extract came back. They confirmed that it's gold bracelet. They confirmed the exact numbers of rubies and diamonds. So it means that it's 100% original because you couldn't fake it. In a way. So fantastic for me to see these watches. As you were pointing out, it's true, I gave a very conservative estimate. The estimate is 5,000 to 10,000 to start off. It'll be interesting to see where this finishes, but I think just a great variety of ladies Patek Philippe watches.
You had great luck with some fresh to market crazy ladies Patek recently.
Yeah, it's true. Yeah,
it's amazing. I guess I could wear it, so
you could.
I can only imagine how much this would cost to make it now, right? If you ask an artisan to make that,
it would be.
That's not part of 10K.
That's even just the gold alone.
For sure, I think the gold alone is probably in today's market. It's probably already the low estimate. Yeah.
This will be. I don't want to butcher the French, but one of the
Haute joaillerie, yeah.
Pieces, yeah. So it's not 5 to 10.
Yeah.
That's interesting, man.
Oh, it is. Yeah, you can definitely rock that, man.
It's a cool one. Yeah, cool. Oh, do you want to talk about the pocket watch, bro?
Ah, yes.
You start, bro.
So we have this final piece for today's selection. Julien wanted to share with us. So this is is it a monk?
Yes. Yeah. I mean, obviously, well, you will probably know better than me, but obviously it looks like Chinese monk inspired. Anyway, I'm a big fan of the Art Deco period, and I think this, really characterized it well. But it's also a kind of complication that you see somewhat having a revival. Some of the, watchmakers are redoing what you call bras en l'air, which means hands in the air, which translate to basically, having the resting position and then, the hour and the minutes being indicated only when you press on the button. So, it's I almost in a way comparable to some of the Van Cleef and Arpels poetic, when it they get together and then separate again. Well, this complication is nice. It was made in quite a few different brands, a few different versions. Vacheron have made some. This one is Saint Gublin. We're not surprised, Gublin in that period were making some of the most amazing, quality Art Deco pieces with some of the best brands in the world. It has two-tone case, it's white gold and yellow gold, exactly ribbed side, similar to what you see in some of the Breguets. But I just think it's just such a beautiful, piece of art once again. And, there's just this time on demand complication, I think is just a wonderful thing.
What year was this made?
1930s.
30s? Wow, that's rather good.
Yeah, I mean, I think the Art Deco, obviously they inspired the Sims quite a lot from from Asian art in general.
Yeah.
Between the use of using lacquer, using, and also it was really the discovery of a lot of the European, of the Asian art that started pouring in from the imports from the Asian countries. And of course it was very trendy back then to have something that would come from the Orient.
Yes. No, I remember seeing this at like the Van Cleef or Arpels exhibition, or it's and Vacheron exhibition. It's definitely a cool one, sure. Final thing we would like to discuss with you, Julien, is what do you think the vintage market is going, or what is the collecting world is looking for right now on your end, from what you can see?
I feel that quite a lot of the new collectors, because in the end, we have to remember that, in order for our market to grow, we need new collectors to come in the market.
Yes.
And, this is where we're at an interesting time in terms of, of social media and interest from the future generations. And I think, if you look at the different, events like Tokyo Watch Week that was just happening, you feel that there's a lot of interest. You feel that there's a lot of new people that are interested in coming into the market. I just feel that the disparities between the interests are getting bigger and bigger. You have on one side the real vintage lovers that will probably throughout their whole life almost exclusively stick to vintage, maybe have one or two modern watches for practicality reasons, or the new generation that are really interested in independence. And there's in my experience anyway, I feel there's a very little crossover between the two. I rarely see somebody that's, for example, a Joule or a Voutilainen collector that says, I also like to connect vintage Patex or vintage Rolex. That crossover is not really happening yet. I don't see that, but I still feel that a lot of people are focusing towards the things that express themselves with character. And I think that in a way you really can only get if you're entering the vintage market, because in the modern, every modern watch looks the same almost, and it doesn't, time has not taken its effect yet on those pieces. 20, 30, 40 years. This will also happen with the independents and with other brands, but my heart has always been in the vintage. So for me, that's where it's at. And but I'm happy to see that there are still new, younger people that enter, and it's not a question of price. And I think this is always a very important factor that a lot of people tend to maybe shy away or be intimidated. You can get a fantastic vintage watch for 1,000, for 2,000 that has a good automatic movement, that looks nice, that still has a high level of craftsmanship, and in the end you still get a lot for what you're buying.
Why do you like vintage, if I may ask?
I think for me it's a lot also about character. I mean, if you look around, I'm not talking into a watch collector's lunch or dinner, because that's very focused. But if you look around, in business settings, most people are going to have a modern Patek, a modern Rolex, and I've seen that over and over again. So for me, it kind of diminishes somewhat my interest. When I have a young guy that comes with a vintage Omega from the 1950s that has maybe an interesting shade or an interesting dial color configuration, that's probably going to pique my interest more because it's just different.
Yes.
And for me also, I think in terms of course, today's watchmaking quality is very high and is adapted to our lifestyle. So they're resistant, they're easy to wear, they have a lot of these features. But in the end, for me, I like to go back to things that are like a little finer, maybe a little more fragile, yes, but also made in the old way, which usually, in my opinion anyway, was of a higher quality, even for more mass-produced watches than they are today. I mean, it's also the involvement of more people, just the simple people working on it rather than machine made.
Yes. Yes.
But I find it interesting you say that there's not much crossover between collectors of independence right now, that's vintage, because I think, at least for me, a lot of the good qualities of independent watchmaking actually goes back to these vintage Pateks, the enamel dials, the handmade bracelets, the nice guilloche on the movements, right? So
that I agree with you in terms of I think the modern independents are going back to the old way of making things, and I think it's also craftsmanship, and it's also what people want. Like it's but what I meant by that is that I find not a lot of crossover in terms of people that collect independent, but that also collect vintage.
Right.
And they're if you open most watch collectors' boxes today, you're either gonna find some modern and some vintage, but it's quite rare to see an independent person that says, I also collect Patek from the 1940s.
That's true.
That's pretty rare, even though it should, if you think about it, because you find the same codes of quality.
right.
As you mentioned, we're in kind of a design-driven collecting world right now. A lot of people are focusing on buying watches that can help them express their own personalities. Besides the obvious choices, because a lot of people are into vintage Cartiers and stuff, like, what would be your choices in getting like a design that's both eternal and very expressive for yourself? I think you might have an answer.
No, but it's a very, very difficult question to really answer, because in the end we always go back to what everybody knows already, but maybe have a tendency to get a little bit influenced by what they see online and the trends. And in the end, you really have to choose the watch that's right for you. Yeah. And some people, for example, love Hoyer Monaco. I do not like a Hoyer Monaco at all. But it's not because it's not a good watch, it's just because I cannot wear a square watch. I mean, for me, it's like, definitely the cubitus mean it's eliminated from my watch that I will never own. That's for sure. But I'm not saying it's just it's a question of the shape. Like, for example, I really tried, I think it's part of a watch collecting journey is, you probably I want to say 95% of people start with a round watch. That's the most common produced and made and seen, etc. And I really wanted to try to push, because sometimes you need to push your boundaries in terms to discover things that you weren't ready to try or ready to wear. And that also comes with age and experience. And, I really, really wanted a Reverso. It was, for me, it was an iconic watch. It's something that I needed to have part of my collection. I bought one, I wore it for a year and a half, and I just decided it just wasn't for me. It's a beautiful watch, sure, but rectangular watch, once again, it's like, maybe I'm just adverse to too much change, but I just couldn't do the Reverso either. So I ended up selling it, and now, if I open my watch box, I only have, round watches.
I think, yes, I definitely understand that. But I think an interesting point will be, I think the younger generation will actually prefer the rectangular or square watches because they're so used to wear Apple watches and smartwatches and all. You're right. Square. So
Yeah.
they're into that kind of shape.
Yeah, but I think, for me, it's like, when technology is driving your watch choice, for me, it's like, you're going in the wrong way. It's like, I don't want to say, okay, because I have a watch that needs to have a big display, I want a watch that's like rectangular. In my age, I had no Apple Watch, so maybe just the fact that I had always round watches pushed my choice round, right? But thank God, some people like different things, because otherwise, we'd all be having the same watch and all driving the same car, and going to the same places for holidays. So I think this is the joy of collecting is being able to go and even go to previews and and be in these environments where you can actually try something on that you've never tried on before and say, hey, you know what, this is different from what I have and I love it.
That's true. Yeah, it's important to experience them in person.
Or to try them on.
Yeah.
We never say that enough, but sometimes the watch looks perfect and once you have it on your wrist, it just doesn't fit.
Yes, and I think it's fun that you mentioned technology, because I was talking about this with a friend. He's a modern watch collector. He's an AP collector. Well, the thing is, because he was asking me if he should buy this newest AP, newest greatest AP. I was like, what turns me off is also the technology. Like, of course, it's the newest and the best. It's like ultra thin with a tourbillon, the chronograph. It's like a classic 39mm size. It's a good product, but the thing with me is that there's always going to be new technology coming out. That watch is a representation of what AP could do with their newest tech, but then next year it can be a little thinner. It could be using a different material. It could be ceramic. It's never ending. So to find something that's eternal, I think it's really difficult and a very personal choice, of course.
Sure.
Yeah.